Good morning, everybody. So you just heard from John, CEO of ARIN. My name is Alyssa Moore, and I sit on the ARIN Advisory Council. So I am not staff. I am a member of the ARIN community, and I am elected to their advisory council body, which is a group of 15 folks from different sections of the community, and we're elected for a 3-year term to basically shepherd community-developed, community-oriented policy proposals through the policy development process. So we come from a wide variety of different backgrounds, very representative of the community. Some of us work for large ISPs, medium ISPs, small ISPs. I personally work for a top-level domain operator. There's nonprofit representation, for-profit representation, university networks, government networks, so the whole gamut of different kinds of network operators representing network operators' policy and the wider internet community policy needs to the ARIN community. So I'm here as a representative of them, of the community, talking about recent policy developments. In my day job, some of the other hats that I wear, so I mentioned I work for a top-level domain operator. I work for the .ca top-level domain. Contrary to popular belief, that does not mean California. It means Canada. We are the TLD for Canada. So sorry, Californians, you have to be Canadian or have Canadian residency or be a member of the royal family. So if there are any royals in here, you can also have a .ca come and talk to me. So that is my other hat, and then I wear a couple of others. So I also sit on the Canada chapter of the Internet Society in Canada and the Montreal Internet Exchange Board of Directors. So that is my hi, hello, this is me, and why I'm here is to talk about recent policy developments. So as you hopefully know, ARIN exhausted their IPv4 free pool of addresses back in 2015, so we're coming up on 4 years since exhaustion. And so the policy proposal queue has changed as a result of that. So there are more policies around the transfer market. So hopefully you know, since you can't get IPv4 from the free pool at ARIN anymore, there's a secondary transfer market and third parties who broker or facilitate these types of transactions to move V4 from a network where maybe it's not being used to one where it can be used. So there are a bunch of policies around how that happens. ARIN oversees those transactions to make sure that they follow policy. There's also a lot of database cleanup efforts in the pipeline. So ARIN is a registry, and the registry is not very good if it's not very accurate. So the ARIN and the wider policy community is really focused on getting the registry to be more accurate with better data. And I'll talk a bit about that later. In addition to, of course, IPv6 and getting that deployed out there on your networks, which John just talked about. So please go and do your case studies. Go talk to the help desk and they'll help you with that. I know I should probably do one for our network. So I'm not trying to get specific policy feedback on the specific language of any given policy. I don't want to gather support for any specific policy. That's not what I am here to do today. However, if you are interested, please chime in on the public policy mailing list if you're not already subscribed. You can go to the ARIN website, I think it's under the participate menu, and get yourself subscribed to that mailing list. It's pretty spicy lately, so kind of some fun conversations going on right now. What I do want to know is whether the general concepts that we're working on in the policy world are desired by the operator community, Whether they are not and they unduly impact you in any way, we need to know. Maybe there's something happening in your network or your particular community that we've completely missed. So that's why we're doing this outreach here today, is to make as many people aware of it as possible and get your feedback on those things. So yeah, this is a new way of soliciting that feedback. So quickly, I'm going to talk a little bit about the ARIN Advisory Council's policy response to some recent news, a recent case of address fraud related to the IPv4 waiting list. Then I want to go through a few newly implemented policies and how they might affect network operators, as well as some that are in the pipeline and could affect you that you can still weigh in on and have your voice heard. I'm going to quickly go through the database cleanup efforts and then hopefully open it up for a bit of discussion. All right. So in the news recently, you may have heard that there was a case of large-scale fraud related to obtaining IPv4 resources from ARIN's waiting list. If you haven't heard about it, again, there's lots of discussion on ARIN's public policy mailing list. There's a Krebs article and a Circle ID article. But essentially, a company, Micfo, I've never actually said that out loud, I don't know how it's pronounced, created a series of shelf companies to obtain resources from this waiting list, and provided ARIN with a whole bunch of false documentation, including falsely notarized officer attestations in order to obtain blocks of v4 from this waiting list. And so this was discovered by ARIN through their due diligence processes. And it was basically discovered that this company had amassed somewhere on the order of 730 some odd thousand IP addresses. And if you pay attention to the transfer market at all, depending on who you ask, an IP address, an IPv4 address is worth anywhere between $15 and $25, depending on the size of block that you're buying. So that's quite a large chunk of change that this party was able to, or attempted to, defraud the internet community of. So ARIN discovered this and has worked with law enforcement, and basically this party is now charged with 20 counts of wire fraud. So this is the first such case, first case in North America for sure. So kind of a watershed moment for the IP address world, and a little bit of spicy news for everyone. So back in January, after this was discovered, the Board of Trustees at ARIN suspended, so it was discovered before January, but in January, the Board of Trustees suspended the waiting list and deferred to the Advisory Council for a policy response. So how can we prevent this from happening in the future? We don't want this to happen again. How can we work on policy to prevent it from happening? So the Advisory Council has made a recommendation. It's now out there on the public policy mailing list for discussion. And our response was basically, if you're going to put yourself on the IPv4 waiting list, which exists for any dredges of v4 that come back to ARIN, and they do come back to ARIN either because they've been revoked, usually for non-payment, or any other kind of contraventions of the Registry Services Agreement, or because a party hasn't been following policy, which is rare as I understand it. But they also come back because people say, I don't want this v4 anymore. They just give it back to ARIN, and ARIN says, you know you can sell the rights to use this, right? And they go, yes, but I don't want to deal with it. So they give it back to ARIN, and resources do come back that way. So the policy response to that was to create this waiting list to make sure that they get distributed, those resources get distributed back out to network operators who can use them. So we still want this waiting list. We still want to be able to distribute those resources, but we've put some stricter parameters around how that would work. So there would be a limit of a /22. If you're coming to the waiting list, you can only get a /22 as our recommendation. An organization may not be added to the waiting list if it already holds in aggregate more than a /20, and there would be a 60-month hold period. So you would have to hold on to anything obtained from the waiting list for a period of 5 years. You can just turn around and sell it after a year, like the party who was defrauding or attempting to defraud ARIN did. So hopefully those parameters would limit those kinds of unlawful actions. So in effect, the waiting list would be limited to pretty small network operators and new entrants or newcomers to the space. So that is a change. If you're a larger organization who is hoping to get themselves on the waiting list, that would no longer be possible under this policy. So this does change things for folks wanting to get on the waiting list. And it's under discussion right now on PPML. You can still weigh in, I believe, for a couple of days. So now I'm going to go through a couple of recently implemented policies that could have an effect or be of interest to you for your network operations. So far in 2019, we have implemented a couple of policies. So the first one allows for inter-regional ASN transfers. So this will be of interest to anyone looking to obtain a 2-byte ASN. Or who works for a network operator who does any kind of merger and acquisition activity on an international basis. But basically there was a desire to be able to transfer ASN between RARs with reciprocal transfer policies. So right now this is RIPE, and APNIC has reciprocal transfer policies with that. And this is largely due to a lack of 2-byte ASNs in the free pool. Those are exhausted, and that's of interest to operators who use large BGP communities. So yes, there's been an update that you can use 4-byte ASNs, but that was only implemented 2017 RFC 8092, and the hardware and software details have not been totally worked out. Kinks haven't been totally worked out, so there's still an appetite for 2-byte ASNs to make large BGP communities work. So to be able to internationally transfer those ASNs was a policy proposal that someone put in, and it's now passed. The next one is removing reallocation requirements for residential market assignments. So this is a bit of a cleaning up, tidying up house type of policy. So there was a policy on the books that was basically a vestige of old cable network requirements that required like a /24 for every neighborhood, even if there were only 10 houses in that neighborhood, to demonstrate use of your V4 to ARIN. You had to say, hey, I've put these IPv4 addresses into use in this network, can I please have more? Well, since ARIN no longer has any more, and you don't have to justify your need for V4 to ARIN, to have to do a detailed reallocation to justify it to ARIN is no longer a requirement for residential customers. So if you're a cable network and you have you do residential reallocations, you're going to want to look into this. It might break some of your tooling or automation associated with those types of reallocations. So come and talk to me if that is the case for you. We also have a few proposals under discussion currently that you can still jump in on the public policy mailing list that could have an effect on your operations. So the first one is to allow interregional transfers of IPv6 resources. So this is a bit of a controversial one on the mailing list right now. The problem statement for this one is that there is operational need to allow RIR transfers of IPv6 resources between RIRs with an equivalent transfer policy. ARIN's RPKI trust anchor is measurably less widely deployed than trust anchors from other RIRs. As a consequence, RPKI ROAs published through ARIN offer less value. Operators seeking to extract the most value from their investment in IPv6 would benefit from the ability to transfer v6 resources to RIRs with more widely deployed RPKI trust anchors. So that's a controversial problem statement in and of itself. So please chime in on the public policy mailing list to let us know whether you agree with this policy proposal, whether there is indeed a need to transfer IPv6 resources, and have your voice heard. And then we also have a bundle of proposals related to sort of merger and acquisition activity on an international basis. So these three here are pretty closely interrelated. So if you operate an international network, you may want to take a look at those policy proposals, especially if you do M&A activity. Okay, so next I want to talk about all of the bad data in the registry, and there's a lot, and it's not a very good state of affairs, guys. So 35% of points of contact are not validated. Sorry, and this data is from January, but I'm assured that it is still quite accurate. It's still quite up to date. So 35% of points of contact are not validated. Only 23% are, and 42% are orphaned. And I can explain what orphaned means in just a second here. But this is a result of a variety of bad practices, like just bad scraping of customer order forms that gets automated into points of contact. A lot of this is based on faults in automation. So we are imploring folks who use those tools to please take a look at them, update them, because it's resulting in some pretty crappy numbers here. And another cause of bad data is like just entering nobody at nobody.com. Come on, we can't do that. It results in really bad data. Nobody at nobody.com is not a person. As well as things that are like super bad, like covert IPv4 transfers or transfers of resources that should not be happening at all. So we're really looking to clean up the registry to improve this state of affairs, because good data is super important. It contributes to internet operability. If something goes wrong, if shit hits the fan and you need to get in contact with an operator at another company, you want to know who the correct point of contact there is if stuff needs to be fixed on the internet. This helps identify network operators to each other, get the right people in contact to fix things when they go awry. The next reason is that stale, bad data is a target for hijackers. Those folks are on the lookout for old, shitty data. If stuff hasn't been updated in a long time, that is a flag that maybe this network is ripe for hijacking. And of course, public safety. Law enforcement uses this data in their investigations. Like it or not, law enforcement is a member of our community. They are members of the internet community. They use this data for investigation purposes, and it ought to be up to date to help them do their job. And finally, it's a contractual requirement of the registration services agreement with ARIN is to keep that data up to date. So having bad data is actually a contravention of the registration services agreement. And finally, it's a core mandate of the regional internet registries to maintain an accurate database. A registry is not very good if it is not accurate. It's a registry. The data is supposed to be all in order. And so I touched on it a bit earlier, but some of the causes of bad data is the automation, the poor tooling, the poor scraping of customer forms that are just feeding it into Whois, into RDAP. So that we need as a community to update our practices in that regard. Another one is that simple reassignments are often sufficient. There are a lot of detailed reassignments going into the database with all kinds of data that is inaccurate when a simple reassignment, which is just, I believe, the customer name and address, would be sufficient. So you're not just plugging in bad data for the sole purpose of just having it there. Often you don't even need to have it there. So depending on the relationship with the customer, depending on what you're doing, what they're doing with their block, it's often sufficient to just have it as a simple reassignment rather than a detailed record. And then orphaned records. So there are orphaned organizations and there are orphaned points of contact. So orphaned points of contact are not associated with any number of resources or valid organizations. And orphaned organizations are not associated with any number of resources. So these are rampant in Whois, and ARIN is going through a pretty big project of cleaning up some of these orphaned records to get resources out of the database that aren't associated, or points of contact that aren't associated with any kinds of resources out of there. And then, of course, I touched on it earlier, the black market covert transfers. Just don't, no, please don't. Right now, there are a few more policy proposals related to improving Whois accuracy. So one of them on the docket is to disallow third-party organization record creation. So this would prevent orgs from creating third-party records. So if I am an ISP or a content delivery network or whatever, and I have customers, I can't just create a record for them without their knowledge. Record creation has to involve the knowledge and consent of the organization, the point of contact that record would be created for. So this one is pretty far along in the policy process. It's still up for discussion. You can look at some of the history of the discussion on this one. But this would also hopefully contribute to some more accurate registry data. The operational impact is that it could affect some of your tooling. So if you have automation in place that is automatically creating third-party records from customer order forms, this is not going to work for you. You're going to have to change some of that tooling. The next one is to clarify reassignment requirements. So this policy proposal is basically just to clarify when a simple reassignment versus a detailed reassignment is required. So if in your organization, in your network, you have tooling in place that automatically creates detailed reassignments when they could just be simple ones. That is something that you're going to want to look into. And finally, there's another policy proposal on the docket under discussion that would have validation of an abuse contact 2 times per year. That's also under discussion. The proposer of this policy didn't feel that the current validation process was sufficient, so they have proposed an even more heavy-handed validation process for abuse contacts. And now I'm just going to walk you through sort of the new and improved validation procedures for points of contact that ARIN goes through. So every year, ARIN sends an email to points of contact to notify them, like, hey, it's your annual validation time. Please update or confirm that we still have valid data for your POCs. So this is for admin, tech, NOC, and abuse contacts. And after ARIN sends that email out, each point of contact has up to 60 days to either confirm or correct their data. And there's a variety of ways you can do this. You can click on the link, you can send an email that says correct, or you can log into your ARIN online account and validate or update your data. And then if, after careful analysis, ARIN deems a point of contact to be abandoned, they will be marked invalid in WHOIS. So if your point of contact is marked invalid, you haven't validated your contact and you've been marked invalid, then you lose the ability to do a few things in ARIN Online. You lose the ability to make changes to your resources in ARIN Online until you update at least the admin or tech point of contact and validate that the information is correct. So the only thing that you can do are make payments or update those contacts until it is validated. And here's just a screenshot of what that validation email looks like. So highlighted, I have all of the places where you can, like I said, respond correct in the subject line, open the URL in your browser, or go into ARIN Online and do everything in there. So I talked a bit about this, or no, maybe I didn't talk about this one yet. So point of contact notification and validation upon reassignment or reallocation. So this policy proposal is currently recommended to the board for adoption. I believe they're meeting next week, and if they like the proposal, it will become policy. So this would prevent circumstances where like when a network operator makes a reallocation or a detailed reassignment, whomever is the recipient of that reassignment or reallocation is going to be notified, and they have to validate their point of contact before it will go into the WHOIS database. Yeah. So I want to open it up for a little bit of discussion. So I'll just do a quick recap, and then if you have any input on any of the concepts or questions about any of the policy proposals or comments, this is the time for it. I will take your feedback back to the ARIN Advisory Council. But yeah, just as a recap, if you use automated tooling to create reallocations or reassignments, our new point of contact validation procedures might affect this automation, so please look into it. Recent policy changes are going to affect who's eligible to get IPv4 resources from the waitlist. new proposals may change operators' ability to move resources between RIRs, and policy cleanup efforts are designed to make life easier for you. So I will open it up to discussion. If anyone has anything to say, ask, comment, I would love to hear from you. Nope. Okay. If you come and find me in the hallways, if you have any questions about this, if you would like to find out how to participate in the ARIN community, we have a meeting that's associated with the fall NANOG in Austin. So NANOG's the first 3 days of the week, and the ARIN meeting is the last 2 days of the week. We also have the public policy mailing list that I mentioned, and you can view all of the current policy proposals online and see the archives of the discussions about them as well. Thank you.